Welcome back to the Zero to Hero podcast. I am your host, Denny Dumas. Producer Carl, how are you doing this evening?
I'm great. How are you?
Excellent. I would like to start this podcast off before introducing our guest tonight to have a quick moment of silence for the Seattle Seahawks. We had a rough weekend. We had a lot of opportunities to win. Some of you out there are arguing Pete Carroll's play calling. I want to stick by my guy, but a quick moment of silence. Thank you. It was a rough weekend. Our guest tonight, I'm pretty excited about. Mandy Gill, how are you?
I'm wonderful. Very excited to be here. Also very sad about the Seahawks.
Thank you.
Yes, so very good on the moment of silence there. Much needed.
I know. A quick intro to Mandy Gill, and then I'll let you talk a little bit about yourself. Mandy Gill has started a couple businesses, MGM Fitness, one of them, the Mandy Gill app, the other. She is a phenomenal athlete, sponsored by Reebok. She has been featured in a number of health and fitness magazines and has appeared on morning TV dozens and dozens of times.
I think we actually counted the other day and it was like 120 plus and we stopped.
Well, there you go.
Thank
more
you.
Than a couple dozen.
It's a passion.
Mandy, I always ask my guests to describe themselves in 3 words to start. Or small phrases.
Okay, definitely joyful, determined, and energetic.
I love that you say joyful and energetic because you are, and not that I know you super well, but you are one of the most optimistic, energetic, positive people that I've met ever. And
thank you.
Good segue, because I wanted to kind of pick your brain on where does that come from? Have you always been like that as a kid?
You know, it did start as a kid. Yeah. Interesting you asked, and it's taken a lot of work and digging into who I am to figure out where that did come from. Because I won't lie to you, oftentimes I'm like, I'm the weirdo here. But in a good way, let's just put it that way. My parents split when I was 5, and at that point in time, it was obviously a devastation to the family. But I saw my mom at that point in time, and I won't get too much into it, but I did see my mom in the hospital at that point, and she did get out of the hospital. And I knew after going and visiting her and seeing the process of, you know, our family becoming stronger, that there was nothing in life. And I discovered this at 5. That's what
I was going to say. Did you even fully understand what was going on at 5?
I knew what was happening. I didn't know what it meant. Yeah. Is what I'll say. So like I can still see myself in, like, it was Easter time. I can still see myself in the little Easter dress, handing over Kinder Surprises. Don't recommend those nowadays. So I hope we're not sponsored by them.
Not anymore. We're not. Yeah.
I've done that before. But you know, I remember standing there and handing them over to Mom in the hospital. And at that point in time, after she got out, I realized, like, we can get through anything. And by we, I meant me from the beginning. And it just was all in regards to perspective. So again, at 5, would I have been able to give this explanation? No. Has it taken years of work with my mind coach? 100%. But just really looking at that situation and saying that was the turning point for me, where I just realized it's completely in our own hands. Whatever's happening in our lives is literally a choice that we have to make of what direction we want to interpretate it and then go with our feelings.
Gary Vee has a quote, and I love this quote so much. He says, you made your bed, fucking sleep in it. Which is basically like, you are in complete control of your life. You make decisions to put yourself in situations. If they don't work out, get yourself out of them.
Yep.
And I replay that quote in my head, honestly, almost daily. If something negative happens in business, in personal life, whatever, it'd be like, I put myself in this situation, so I'm dealing with the consequences now.
Do you sometimes find yourself fighting against hearing that because you're like, how did I get myself here? Or do you know the path you took?
100%. I know the path I took, for sure.
That's so good. That awareness is huge.
It's perspective too, right? Exactly what you said is just, when you can pull yourself out of a situation and be like, in a month from now, am I really going to care that much about this situation? Right now, it seems like a big deal. But in a month from now, it's going to be such a small little thing that I just had to get over.
Hugely. And I appreciate you saying that. My, in December, there was just something I journal, like when we talk about like routines of the morning, 5 a.m. I'm up, I have my coffee and I'm journaling. And something that came to me in December was to see the bigger picture. And it's exactly what you're saying. It's like in this moment of time, right? We're always like, this is so huge. Why can't we control this? I want to do this. I want to do that. And it's like, does that really matter in the big scheme of it all? And I think that's a big focus going into this year for sure, is to see the bigger picture of a lot of things. So I celebrate you hugely for doing that.
Where did that come from for you? Because I don't know where it came from for me, and I describe myself as a very rational person, that I'm able to like pull myself out of a really negative situation and just kind of look at it from a big picture, like you said.
Yeah. But
a lot of people don't see things that way and get consumed in a negative situation or environment. Hugely. And what I want to say is, like, I mean, you were so wonderful to introduce me in the world of fitness, which is something obviously I'm very passionate about. I see life and what I do as a career much, much larger than that. When I say that, the reason I bring it up is because I look at our muscles. So I'm working with clients, right? And we want to make sure that we're developing like the physical aspect. But as much as we're developing muscles in order to be able to see a change, we also need to look at the muscles of the mind and what we want to see as a change there. And that's totally in our own hands. So to answer your question, what I look at as the bigger picture is it's not something that happens overnight. It's something that takes continuous work and reminding. I personally don't have cable, which is really hard when the Seahawks are playing, but I've got good friends. Or good feet on the internet, one or the other. And so, it comes down to like what we're putting in our minds on a constant basis. I'll get in the car and I listen to podcasts. And don't get me wrong, I, turn on the country music station from time to time and I'm rocking out and singing at the top of my lungs to country music. But it comes down to training the muscle of the mind and being just more cautious of it, and how much we can build it for the better. Yeah, for me, I mean, fitness and getting into it in the last couple of years has been probably more so beneficial for me mentally than physically, although it obviously is doing good things for me physically. But mentally, it's been a huge push for me to move forward from a lot of things. It's crazy. I wasn't expecting it at all. I was going into it thinking, okay, I don't feel very good. I weigh a lot more than I want to weigh right now. I need to make changes. And not that I saw the changes right away, but it just like, whatever it does, maybe the science behind it, but like something in your head after a run, you just feel like so much more clear.
Endorphins. Yeah, naturally. It's helping with your hormones.
Science stuff, Carl. I don't know. Yeah.
We don't tell people these things because they just would wrap their minds around it far too much. It's funny because when I'm oftentimes talking to a new client or I'm talking to my team and we're looking at ways to help to encourage people, I'm very blunt and honest that the physical changes are such a byproduct of what you're actually really doing.
Totally.
So when I hear the word like fitness, I think to myself, what people really realize underneath all of that, like you're moving your body, and motion to me brings emotion. And I see that in every single person that I've ever worked with. The moment that they're moving their body, motion brings emotion. They're automatically either angry, and hey, go ahead, be angry, no problem. I should probably be doing therapy for some of the things I hear. But, or they're super happy and excited. But regardless of what they're going through during that state, it is exactly what they need, because we hold on to so much of it in our bodies. We wonder why our necks are sore. Oh, our shoulders are up really nice and tight, right? And it's like our bodies just need to go through the motion of workouts. And that's why it is super important, to move your body once a day or 5 days a week, whatever works best for you.
Totally. I introduce you in the fitness world.
Yes.
You say that's a very small portion of what you do. Give us a big picture, Mandy Gill.
Okay, so starting last year, 2018 was a huge investment in myself when it came to becoming comfortable with public speaking. My broadcasting background is really to thank for that. I worked in morning show radio and afternoon show radio up until 2012, and then got into the television side of things, and became super passionate about sharing how my life changed massively from fitness. And when I say, like, yes, my body changed, it was wonderful. That was, again, a byproduct. But the way that I felt about myself, the way that I looked at life, the way that I saw opportunities was something that I knew, like when we go back to like the Simon Sinek type of things, right? What is your why? And really, I wanted to share the great feeling that I know I get with the rest of the world. So being able to talk about ways to bring that into your lifestyle has become a huge passion when it comes to international public speaking. And then second to that, we work with clients within the app. And again, it comes to, nutrition and fitness, but really what it is it's something that's so much more. We're creating a relationship with these people, but they're also creating a relationship with themselves. Totally. That is completely brand new to them. And it's a little terrifying at times, but they're holding themselves accountable as much as we are. And they're seeing that they actually are capable of things. So when I say that it's much more than fitness, it comes down to trickling into every single part of their lives. That we see a great change.
I obviously want to talk to you about your business and how you started it. Mm-hmm. But why don't you maybe give us a quick little summary of how you got into fitness and when that was? And what kind of pushed you to go that path?
Okay, so I was resisting hugely. In 2011, I was on an afternoon show here in Vancouver, a top 40 radio station. And what was happening at that time was I was really starting to notice that the world of broadcasting was changing. When I say that, we were coming in with Sirius Radio, we were coming in with XM Radio, and my talk time on air was getting less and less and less, which most people would be like, yay, hurrah, I can, do whatever I want to in the control room and just have a party in here and show up for 4 hours of the day, but talk for 3 minutes total. I was completely discouraged. Totally. So I was on the other end of things. You can probably tell from the businesses I've created. So what ended up happening was I took a solo trip by myself to Europe, right over like after Christmas of 2012, heading into 2012. Okay. And I was landing in Paris on New Year's Day, and I was writing in my journal, and I wrote down that I wanted to start to bridge broadcasting and fitness. So two of my absolute passions. Now, I should also say that fitness I got involved in after overcoming anorexia in my late teens, and just really discovering that there was so much more to life to live than to be restrictive and, to have that controlling a part of my life. So I had gotten into fitness, and I'd absolutely loved it. And I knew that I wanted to start combining fitness and broadcasting as two of my passions. So I arrived home from Europe. I walked in. I got the best confidence in the world. I walked into the vice president of Bell Media's office. And I looked at him and I said, I want to start doing fitness segments on the CTV. And I'm not looking for pay. I'm just looking to do this to express my creative side and to grow. And he said, you know what, come back next Monday. Let's see what you've got. Show me what you're working with. So I arrived next Monday and I showed him exactly what I had. And he said, you can start next Monday. So Mondays became a favorite day, which I know they are of yours too.
Love Mondays. Yeah.
It's the best way to start the week. So many opportunities. And I did a segment every single week for 52 weeks that year.
So cool.
And I became super passionate about it. And it was just fully out of creativity when I was in the control room doing the afternoon show. Because again, there was very little talk time and it was getting less and less and less. What I was doing was putting together my segments for the next week. Mm-hmm. So when we look at that, what ended up happening was actually oftentimes we look at like when you're kind of forced to pivot in life, it being like obviously such a challenge, but super rewarding in the end, depending on how you look at it. So I was actually part of the first part of restructuring in broadcasting at Bell Media in 2012. So I was one of like 70 something that was let go. And I was totally devastated. I had my first mortgage. I was on cloud nine because everything was just working in my favor. It was wonderful. I was again doing this fitness side of things for passion. I would get a ton of emails every week and I'd respond to people and say, I'm so sorry. It's not what I do for a living. I'm just there to provide knowledge. See you on TV next Monday. And so I was devastated when I was part of the restructuring and fought the vice president of Bell Media on it. Actually, he's seen me down in Pacific Center quite a few times, a mall here in Vancouver. And he said, you know what, Mandy, do you see now the bigger picture? Because I would go back into his office and I would say, if you guys let me go, I will be locked out of the company for 2 months, or 2 years. So I won't accept my severance. And I went back into his office for 2 months and I would go in every single week. And he was like, Mandy, there's a way better purpose for you. So me again, not seeing that, he still kept me on CTV. I went over to another radio station and I worked there for about 3 months, was part of restructuring there. So if there wasn't enough signs that were happening to say like, it's time to pivot, then I don't know what to say. But it really came down to, I wanted more stability in my life, which some people might not say comes from starting a business, but I knew it was going to take time. Sure. Again, I bring up the piece about the mortgage because, having your first mortgage, you're like, I need to make these payments. I need to make sure I'm doing this properly. So I knew that there was a way bigger purpose. So I took a couple months to myself, figured out what I needed to do in order to make sure I had all the credentials. And really what came from it was realizing that it was time to, actually like put my money where my mouth was when we talk about passion and say like, yes, you can follow what you're absolutely 100% passionate about. Yes, it takes discipline and boundaries, but you can create amazing things from it. And from that, the business was born.
For a lot of people hearing the word start a business, a lot of people, especially our age in their mid to late 20s, don't understand what that takes or where you get knowledge for that kind of stuff. So how do you go from, deciding I see my life going this way, I want to start a fitness business. Mm-hmm. Where do I go now?
I would say the first thing I would highly recommend is mentors. The reason why I say that, and like even listening to a podcast like something like this, like just keep yourself constantly educated. I'm 6 years into it now, and I still on a daily basis am listening to something to help me. And what I pride hugely is you do the same with yourself, right? I mean, we are constantly evolving. And so the first place I would say to start is to get, 3 people that that you can look to, that you would look at their business right now. And even if you look at their business and you're like, how could I ever achieve that? Doesn't matter. Take that, fear, false evidence appearing real completely out of it and just relate yourself and say, hey, you know what? This is an idea I have. Would I have your support if I was to look out to you? I can truthfully say that there was periods of time back in 2013 where I had clients where they thought I was coming to them for a training session, which yes, I definitely was. But the whole 60 minutes, it was like a business lesson. I was like, so who files your taxes? And I was just asking questions. I probably asked a lot of offside questions, but in all truth, I was just like, I'm doing this. And they are still amazing people in my life to this day. And what was actually really beautiful was, I was a part of a wedding party back in September, and the groom came up and said that it's interesting because now the roles have reversed. So I was always looking to him for huge amounts of like knowledge and, motivation. And he's like, it's interesting because now it's reversed. I obviously don't see it like that, but yeah, it was very, very touching. So just don't step back from chasing that dream and realizing the power of actual connection. Doesn't matter if it's via email, FaceTime, in person, going for a coffee together. People really do want to help, which I think is what's beautiful about this world.
I had a couple people that I had looked to for, just an outlet really to ask questions when I got into real estate. And I'm in a similar situation now, and it's super humbling to actually be able to admit this, but it is what it is, and I'm excited to share it, that now they're coming back to me for knowledge, and they're saying, this is what I'm seeing in a contract. How do I deal with this? And I'm saying, well, I've seen that 37 times now, so I know exactly what to do. But going back to your point about people want to help, I reached out to a ton of people early in my career. Let me take you for coffee, ask you what you do, ask a ton of questions. And so that is one of the reasons that I never say no to coffee meetings, is that a lot of people said no to me, which is fine. But the handful of people that said yes were so pivotal in me getting from zero to here. Name of the podcast.
Plug.
I want to be that guy for people that says yes, whether you're in real estate or any other self-employment business. If you think that I have anything of value to add to you and your career, I would that's why one of the reasons for starting the podcast is that I just want there to be an outlet that I didn't feel like I had early in my career that maybe can help give someone a kick of motivation or answer a question that they may not know where to find an answer for.
And the world needs more of that. And I think what's really important to mention is as much as somebody's going to come to you with a question throughout, the next how many decades, what is really beautiful about it is you are constantly relearning. Or there's something that's showing up in their life that is going to show up in yours again at some point in time. So really the messaging about how I want to use the word recycle, oftentimes I could have said something 5 years ago that I would look back on now and be like, wow, was I ever motivated? And believe me, it does happen. And so it's great to have that reminder as well for ourselves, because we are constantly learning. And again, it comes down to just being open to have the conversation and just ask for help.
And I'm not anywhere near where I want to be, but it's cool to look back at 2018 and completely know exactly that was the most growth I've ever had in 1 year personally. And so it's cool to think that, okay, I thought I was doing pretty well in real estate, but then my last year, I completely blew myself away with how much I grew. And so it is exciting moving forward to know that type of growth is achievable. And it almost motivates me to work even harder and look into different platforms for education, really.
Yes.
And how to get better.
Because now you see and you know how it feels to hit that limit, but even go a little bit further.
Totally.
That's what happens with ultramarathon running.
I don't know if that's something I'm going to be ever into. For me, it was the Seymour hike in the summer.
How many days?
I did it in 37 minutes. Now I need to do it in 36. Okay,
exactly.
I did it in 36. Now I need to do it in 35. Yeah.
And we're engraved to think that way too, right? We're always wanting to achieve.
With everything.
Yes. And that's why we're here on this earth is, to constantly keep evolving. And I love to be able to have conversations like this because to be able to relate to people.
For sure.
So important.
How long have you had the app?
We only launched it a year and a half ago now.
How did... I'm assuming the business kind of pivoted again into online.
Yes,
because that is where the world goes. But how did you decide to do that?
Okay, so what ended up happening is I knew that a huge part of my life was starting to become on the road speaking. And what ended up happening is that meant I couldn't be with my clients as much as I wanted to. Therefore, I actually started in Google Docs. Spreadsheets. And there's one client I can think of in particular. And it was about 4 years ago now that I just said, okay, everything's going to be right here for you. You make a note, I'll make a note, and we're just going to rock this. And so it was evolving as I was constantly growing. But I would really say that it was because I knew that a large part of my life was on the road speaking. And second of all, it was the fact of the matter that when I'm with one client, I love that one-on-one time, and I still make sure that I take 5 clients locally here within town a year, face-to-face, because I know it feeds my soul for sure. I love seeing them in movement, and I love being with them. And but what I also knew was that I can see that one client in an hour, or I can touch 10 lives in an hour via the app. with people anywhere across the world. So we've been reached out to, from like even places like Korea that just blow my mind. And it's so humbling just to hear from people and them to be like, this is all I need. Like I've got to, we've all got condo gyms now. It's a large part of just putting on those running shoes and going downstairs. So yeah.
How do you, I love that app business and it's so cool to me, but I know very little about it. But how do you market out internationally? How are you gaining clients in Japan? You just
said? Yeah. It's interesting. I was actually asked that question this morning. The number one answer for you is referrals. Yeah. Which is something I'm really grateful for. It is truthfully, people were saying, how about the side of like television and all that type of stuff? To be totally truthful with you, that adds credibility. It doesn't necessarily get us clients at all. But really what it comes down to, number one for us is referrals. And then second of all, social media is a huge drive for us.
Do you market through social media?
We definitely do. Yeah. Organically though. Yeah. Something that I would highly recommend, assessing. I call her my twin. It's not by blood, but she is out in Toronto and we are, identical in a million ways. It's scary. And so Twin and I hold each other to our 2019 goal calls that we always have. And then we do a call every single week. And one of our calls coming up this month is to reassess and to make sure that social media is in line with the exact direction that we're going. When I say we're, I mean my team. But she helps to hold me accountable to that so that I can then communicate it with them, because I think it is really important to make sure, because you can get stuck in that black hole, right? Really? Yes. Yeah.
Talking about social media, what are you trying to achieve personally and professionally with social media?
Very good question.
Because I'm obsessed with it.
Yes. Okay. Very good. I love your honest answer. If I could put it, okay. So I would say, for me, it's emotion. First heartfelt thing is like to not sell. Like it's interesting because we're talking about marketing, but it's not about selling on there. It's literally about creating emotion. So it's, creating that drive within somebody where they see the worth in themselves. And then literally it is then in their hands. So for myself personally, I love being able to motivate. MGM Fitness, which you introduced off the top, actually stands for Mandy Gill Motivates. And so that was something that we would always joke about back in radio days. And it really just stuck through. So it then transferred into the fitness business. But really just, wanting people to see that life is literally, again, choice and perspective and motivation and again, fitness and nutrition being a byproduct of that, but really what can come from that, what is so possible.
Cool. What about personally? I know you have a fantastic social media.
Thank you.
And even though I reached out to you a couple months ago, but I've been following it for a while. But what are you trying to achieve personally? Or is it solely focused more on the business aspect and motivating people?
I would say connection.
Yeah.
That's my number one purpose. Hugely. Like I get people connecting all the way from my mom in Calgary who comments on every single Instagram story. I open up that feed and I'm like, woo, where do we start, Mom? And she just talked to me 5 minutes ago on the phone, probably FaceTime, but bless her heart. And, connection all the way to the woman, I'm going to think of, her name is Angel. And she, when I say that I became very passionate about fitness after overcoming anorexia, she was my coach at the age of 19 who got me into fitness and seeing like the body is not about starving it. It's about, giving it the proper fuel and living an extraordinary life. That is something I'm super passionate about. So she now messages me and is like, Mandy, I've had 2 kids. I want to get involved in a 10K. And I'm like, oh my gosh, let's do this. You can do it in a heartbeat. So again, it's that connection and not really seeing what you're doing in that exact moment in time, but knowing that there's always a greater purpose when you're coming from the best place in your heart.
Totally. Engagement is a big thing for me in terms of always replying back to any comment or message that you get.
Everyone.
Isn't it huge?
It's amazing. It challenges you when
Totally.
we talk about comfort zones.
Totally.
Sometimes the things that you hear, you're like, okay, I can't just hit delete. And it's wonderful because it helps us to grow, again, going back to that aspect. But then it also helps us to see different perspectives too, which I think is really important.
That's the big thing for me, is that I'm pretty set in the ways that I think because it works for me.
Yeah.
But I know it's not for everyone. So putting myself out there on social media, have had a lot of positive feedback, especially with the fitness stuff.
Yeah.
But there's always the negative comments.
Yep.
And they're more learning experiences than anything else. It doesn't
Yes.
affect me. It doesn't change who I am and where I want to go. It's more just like, okay, maybe I should be a little bit more conscious of this because it could come off to someone else as this.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's, again, taking into consideration, right, what others' feelings are. But then at the same point in time, if you're doing it authentically and you're doing it from the heart, then it's like, you're going to, what was it? I always remember learning, and again, this relates back to television and radio, but any type of publicity is good publicity, really, right? You're getting people talking. So if it's irked something in them, well, maybe they need to dig a little bit deeper, because really it's our choice, right, to figure out what it is. And if they're not liking it, then literally that's their choice. They can unfollow.
How motivating and humbling is a comment on a post or a dark message from someone saying thank you, or like it's so fun watching you. You've got me, like, I've got a few of these recently. You've got me off my ass, and I've been wanting to get back in the gym, but like watching you doing this every single day has just pushed me to start.
I like melted in my chair right when you said that.
Isn't
That's
that
my why right there.
It's such a crazy feeling, and I had no idea until, I don't know why I started posting about fitness, because it was important to me, probably.
I think that's what actually got me back connected with you.
Yeah.
I saw the hikes you were doing. Again, what was it, 23 in a row?
Same one.
Last summer. We know where to find this man.
July and August.
Yeah, exactly. It's that feeling that you can't quite explain until somebody puts themselves in those shoes. And then when you see somebody making that investment in themselves, you can automatically at that second relate.
Totally.
And that's what I think is so beautiful about it. And to know that, like, you had somebody or something that was motivating you to get back involved in fitness or to get involved in it for the first time, whatever it might be. And it had to be, we look at like the Tony Robbins analogy. There's always going to be one thought that's more powerful than the other. So obviously your, motivation was top of mind for that person who's writing that comment, in order to get them to drive to do what they're doing to be different. And that's pretty darn powerful.
So cool. Mm-hmm. You talked early on about getting a mentor, getting into a business, or wanting to get into a specific field. You talk about having a mind coach.
Yes.
I don't really know exactly what a mind coach is. Maybe like give me a little quick intro into what a mind coach is, and then like what they've been helping you with.
She's got many titles.
Okay.
Sometimes I actually call her more than anything my big sister. And so she is somebody that I was introduced to back in 2010. And I've worked with everything with her from, difficulties in work, to my family, to relationships, literally just somebody who is an unbiased opinion that I can go to, that I know is going to be very straight up with me. It's interesting. I would look to her as like a sounding board more than I would a mentor. In the mentor side of things, I'm just thinking to myself, I've only really got actually one mentor that's in the fitness world. The others are all the business side, because I think it transfers so easily through. But really, when it comes to my mind coach, who is, she's also a hypnotherapist. She's a big sister to me. You could really say like a counselor, a therapist, somebody that I can go to that I just know will listen And I can sit there and either be extremely happy or extremely sad and express any kind of emotion. But I do genuinely feel that in the world of where we are now, not even if you're a business owner, regardless of where you are, just somebody who can listen.
Would you recommend that type of environment to other self-employed entrepreneur people?
Absolutely, I would.
Because I've never done counseling or any sort of formal stuff like that. But for me, this is it.
Oh.
It's the conversations with other people who have a similar mindset to me. And so it's sharing experiences and listening to other people's experiences and learning through that.
Hugely.
But I've never tried any, and I'm open to it. I've just never maybe made the time for it. I don't know.
I think what's really important to note is it will come up with certain points in time in your life. So I know I went probably for a good year where I was like, I'm great. I don't need a thing. I've got all these practices that I'm, into and doing. And I feel really confident that I don't need it. That's wonderful, but always to know that you've got it as a resource. Like we're 2019 now. And I can say that like after 9 years, I know I can go back to this woman in a heartbeat. And it's just to know that she is there is extremely comforting.
Cool.
Yeah. So again, these types of conversations, amazing. It works our minds. It, helps us to grow. But there's also probably some things, as much as I am a very open book and a vulnerable person, that I wouldn't say outside of the room with her. Whether it be something going on in my family or, just things that are kept privately. So for that purpose, I really enjoy it.
What would you say has been the biggest positive with that type of a relationship?
Okay, so the number one thing that comes to me is what the subconscious mind is capable of doing. So a lot of the things that we work on together, when we look at the tip of an iceberg coming out of the ocean, we would look at, that being like the 5% of our conscious mind that we are aware of. The other 95% being subconscious. So the thoughts that we don't even think we're thinking, the things that we're doing, like me snapping my fingers right now, walking in here, giving you a big hug. You're very tall, so stepping on my tippy toes to give you a big hug. But it's just amazing. It's like, for me, it's accessing the part of my brain and the routines that I've been doing for so long in my life. And if I didn't get those hour and a half quiet sessions with her to really dive deeper into what the subconscious mind is leading me into in life, I don't think I would be as far as I am now.
It sounds to me like it's more training for you than therapeutic, really.
Oh, hugely. Yeah. I didn't think I was ever the type that could be hypnotized. And oh my gosh, I can literally fall into it within like 30 seconds. So I can share something.
That just blew my mind.
Yeah. I hope neither of you are hypnotists. This could get really good. I worked with her hugely on fear of flying. So as a teenager, no problem flying. All of a sudden I hit my 20s and automatically I was just like completely gripping, white knuckled on the airplane, sweating, and was constantly like, we're going to go down. Interesting thing is one of my mentors is a pilot. And he would always say to me, Mandy, if there's two wings on the plane and you can look out, doesn't matter how much the plane's moving, you are going absolutely nowhere.
Yeah.
Didn't matter that he would tell me that. I was like, you're just full of it. You're a pilot, Anyways, I was determined. I worked with her hugely on what was going in my subconscious mind. And had I have not have worked with her on that, I would have turned down an incredible invite from my dad to go say bye to my Nana right before she passed at 93 years old in Montreal. I still remember stepping on that plane and being extremely nervous, but being like, I can do this. Second, I wouldn't be who I am now, exploring different areas of the world, most recently speaking in New Zealand last month, the month before that speaking in Los Angeles, if I did not hop on a plane. So again, it's like accessing that subconscious part of the mind that is really, sometimes full of BS. There's a array of beautiful things that are happening in there. Don't get me wrong, but also the parts where you've got work to do and just showing up and saying, okay, I'm ready to fight this.
Very cool.
Thank you.
I would like to talk a little bit about your public speaking.
Yep.
And kind of how that's progressed in the last year, and where New Zealand is a pretty cool place to travel and do it.
Thank you.
But what brought that on? I guess, is that for you kind of like me doing the podcast? You're like, how do I scale my information?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, massively.
Okay.
Yeah. Getting in front of a group of people. And, we've got a lot of interest nowadays, especially in plant-based athletics. So being able to go out there and speak to, top of mind right now is last year at the Olympics, there was a commercial for the first time ever. And I want to also put out there too that regardless of being plant-based, I've got a team of nutritionists that we work with, and we work with people all over the world that come from every walk of life. My body was asking to be plant-based about 2 years before I decided to honor it. So I really do believe that every body is different. So everybody is asking for something completely different. I don't think that it's a cookie cutter. But basically why I lead into saying that is because we look at all different walks of life and we accept it and are like, hey, that's working for you. That's awesome. Let's create the best you from that. So, a company that I recently started working with called Switch for Good. There's an Olympian who started it, and she was part of airing a commercial that said that there is actually a number of athletes that were involved in the Olympics that were not consuming milk because, we see the milk mustaches, and I remember growing up seeing those all the time.
All the time, yeah.
And I still do it just with almond milk, and it's a lot of fun, probably just looking at myself in the mirror. So anyways, it was just, I really started to notice that not only was there a huge need for people to learn what it even meant to be plant-based or, vegan. I don't usually use that word because I find that there's just kind of puts people in a box,
Sure.
and that's not what it's all about. So it's about educating. And so I noticed that there was a huge need for it. And through my passions, again, we talk about social media, just being able to say, hey, here's what I'm doing. Here's how fast my body's recovering, operating, everything like that. There became a big, large need, and companies started to reach out about that. So that was a huge part of where the public speaking came from.
What, you mentioned you started feeling signs in your body that kind of push you towards plant life.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about those signs that you were seeing and what to look for in terms of...
Yes.
Because I'm starting to notice some now, but you don't really think much about it. But I'm noticing
Yes.
The biggest thing with me is bread.
Okay.
Is I feel like crap after I eat bread. I feel bloated all the time. And so I'm just trying to eat less bread.
And you feel good from it?
I feel less chubby. For whatever reason.
Happy New Year.
Yeah. I'll eat a sandwich and an hour later I'm like, I feel like shit, but I just had like a roasted chicken and lettuce sandwich. Like it shouldn't make me feel like shit.
Well, it's not the chicken and it's not the lettuce.
Yeah.
So, no, and I think that's really great is just, you're in tune. Right? You're listening to your body, and you've gotten to a point now where you know what feels good in your body and what doesn't. Food is fuel. As much as we use it as and my gosh, I'm one to talk, right? Coming from anorexia, it's so great to now be able to sit here and smile and talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously to work with a lot of youth groups on it nowadays. It's amazing how much literally food is fuel. Like, you want to go up Mount Seymour faster? Okay, your body's going to tell you what it needs. And so what I would really say is, for myself, the number one signs were I was starting to feel very nauseous after I would eat meat. And I was never really a heavy meat eater, even being born and raised in Calgary, Alberta. It's like steak all the time. And, I still go home. My dad looks at me like I am some hippie, but I'm like, come on, Dad. Just try the tempeh, will ya? No, it never does. My body was telling me that it was just, I was very nauseous. And I knew that was just a sign. I had two big stipulations. It sounds crazy. I didn't think my family would accept me for this big change. At that point in time, I had an extended family and I was just like, oh, this isn't going to work. I've already, I've already got requests put in. I'm going to be putting in more. That's not going to work. So let's just zip it and eat what you're going to eat. So that was my first thing that I shied away from, and why it took me 2 years. The second thing was because I was competing so high level that I didn't think my body, I was that statistic. I did not think I could operate without protein being meat.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Where are you finding protein elsewhere? Because I don't know these. I am so uneducated in this realm. So I'm just, for my curiosity, I'm curious.
Absolutely. So hugely, I'm a big fan of tempeh.
I don't even know what that is.
I'm gonna have to bring some in for you guys. It's delicious.
I'm gonna Google it as soon as I leave.
It's amazing. I should have brought some in here. That would have been great live. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of tempeh personally. I love nuts, seeds, legumes, beans. It's amazing where we can find protein sources. I love vegetables. Like my body actually, it sounds weird, like craves vegetables. I know nobody says that. But it's amazing how it's transitioned as over the years. And so I even find that I get, great amounts of protein, even from broccoli. You can look at, different things like edamame beans, and there's really no limit to where you can find it when you're having a balanced diet. So I will also say too, I eat a lot of fats. So that being like nuts and seeds, a lot of protein comes from there.
Interesting. I like nuts. Maybe I'll eat more nuts.
Cashews,
and
almonds.
Avoid white bread.
Yes.
That's what I'm avoiding.
Yes, absolutely. You will run faster. The thing is like, if we were to go to Italy and we were to have a piece of bread there, it'd be very different with the way our body reacts. Sure. Unfortunately, a lot of things are a lot more processed here. And so your body's looking at like, this science experiment that's coming in, and it's kind of like, oh gosh, what's going on here? Like you blowed up, right? Yeah. And so you go somewhere else where, bread doesn't have that effect, and you see a completely different result. So it's not to ex-nay it completely. It's just to be more aware of what you are putting in your body.
Okay. Going into an event where you're talking, what is your keynote trying to accomplish? What do you want people to take away from?
One thing. It's most important to literally zero it in on like one thing. Because there's so many things that are going on in this day and age. Even if you get their attention for an hour and a half, it's like if they can walk away with one thing, that's all that matters. And that's different depending on each presentation that I give.
Sure.
Obviously getting some background knowledge from whoever it is that is reaching out for the speaking purposes. But I would say starting small and just building from there. And if they take away 10, fantastic, but really making sure that it is, hammering in one thing and then creating the actual keynote based around that.
Okay. If a lot of people see fitness and even the idea of eating healthier as very daunting and intimidating, right?
Yes.
Let's say someone who, like me.
Okay, this is easy.
But like my background, we ate a lot of processed foods growing up. Like looking back, it was gross. Like we'd eat Kraft dinner and like taquitos and like pogo sticks. Like,
did you guys do this together?
Huh? We grew up in similar families. Yeah.
Pop-Tarts?
I was never into Pop-Tarts,
okay.
But like I remember my mom would come home with this big box of chocolate covered croissants.
Oh, Costco?
I think she got them from Safeway, maybe Costco.
Okay.
I don't know. And I'd eat like 4 or 5 of those things in a sitting. They're amazing. But looking back, you're just like, how many calories did I just eat? Probably 4,000 for breakfast, right? But So let's say someone growing up in that type of family, I luckily had a very athletic background. Mm-hmm. So that kind of stuff didn't really affect me. But how do you go from like growing up with what you think is normal, and how do you switch into, okay, I'm at a point in my life, I'm 30 years old, I've grew up playing video games and eating shitty food. I want to feel better. How do I start?
Small.
With both fitness and nutrition.
Nutrition. Okay. So if I was looking at somebody of that type at this exact moment, and I can actually think of one of our clients who's, somewhat comparable in that, still had an athletic background, but is recently, we hit about the 150-pound loss for him.
Wow.
And when I say starting small, it was something as simple as, let's get you outside for 15 minutes a day. Just outside. Doesn't matter what you're doing. Doesn't matter if you walk the block 10 times. It doesn't matter if you, touch your toes 5 times while you're, marching down the street. It doesn't matter. Just start to move your body. I would say that the number one thing is to get somebody that holds you accountable. So when I say starting small, it's so that you can either be checked in with or check in with that person who's helping to hold you accountable. It can be a family member if they're supportive. Don't get me wrong. We also work with a lot of people who we are their family members, because when you do sometimes come from a family of, you were just kind of mentioning, everybody's lived the same way for so long. It's hard to come out of that, and it's hard to get support. So find somebody who can help to hold you accountable. Start small by, 15 minutes of movement. That really was my purpose when I started all my fitness TV segments, is I wanted to talk to, and I still do, talk to that person who's sitting on the couch that is like, I could never do that. And it's like, start small. So, also, when we look in the world of nutrition, my first thing that I would highly look at is how much water are they consuming. That's the first thing I would look at, because there's good chances it's probably, if we're looking at a lifestyle of eating like that, there's probably cravings hugely happening within the body for sugars. And so it's probably pop and juice. So if we can start to replace that, even in the first year, with water, once a day versus having 5 pops in a day, you're having, 3 and then 2 pops, 3 waters, 2 pops. It's like you can even look at, a weight loss of up to 15 pounds in a year just from doing that. So again, it's those little types of inspiration that then start people on the snowball effect, and they see what they're capable of.
You talk about holding yourself accountable. And for me, it was not one individual, but my social media following.
Oh,
So it was like, I'm going to tell the world that I'm doing this, so I better do it.
yes.
Right?
Yes. Hugely.
So I wake up every morning and I'm like, I told the world I was going to do something active every single day for 2019. I have to do it. Doesn't matter if I'm hungover.
No.
Doesn't matter if I slept for an hour. Doesn't matter if I'm sick.
You're doing it.
I'm doing it.
So now I know what to look for.
There you go.
What have you done today?
There you go.
That's
then
awesome.
you get to, in my situation now, then you get to a point where you're like, is this annoying people?
No.
Yeah.
No. And you know what's actually interesting? I've gone through phases of that too. Yeah. And the moment you don't do it,
someone will call you out.
People are checking in and you're like, oh, sorry, I thought I was doing a little too much. And they're like, how dare you not update me on this today? Like, I took 3 weeks off social media over Christmas, and the amount of literally complaints that I had were like, I didn't know how to not feel bad about myself. And I was like, oh, no, that wasn't the purpose. They're like, no, but like literally I didn't know when to put the wine glass down. So don't stop what you're doing. It's awesome.
So if anyone's mad at me out there posting a run video every single day, you can contact Mandy.
Absolutely. And I'll probably tell you to run 5 minutes longer and for 5 minutes faster. So yes, definitely.
All right, Mandy's going to push me a little bit. Mm-hmm. For me, it was never although I am competitive with myself with the hiking, but for running, it was always just like, I'm not training to do a marathon. That doesn't really excite me. Mm-hmm. It's more just, I want to run for 30 minutes every day.
Perfect.
I don't really care if I run 5 kilometers in 30 minutes or 8.5.
So the analogy behind that is something that I can very much so relate to. Meditation. It's your time where literally, you probably don't have any contact with the world other than where you're running and who you're seeing in front of you.
Starting to get better at that.
Good.
Because usually I answer my phone while I'm running.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, and if it works for you, awesome. But yeah, it's your time and you're carving that time out for yourself. So I think that there's the way of acknowledging yourself and holding yourself accountable to what your goals are. But then there's also the aspect of like, there is so many meditative parts of running or even working out for that sake.
That's what it's been for me. Is I say this all the time. Is it's more therapeutic than actually physical. I'm not really trying to lose weight anymore, although I was at the beginning. Mm-hmm. It's more just maintenance, and it's very therapeutic for me.
Clears your mind.
Totally.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I feel way better afterwards.
Do you find that a lot of your creative thinking comes from when you're working out?
That's why I can't put my phone down. It's because so many things are going on in my head. Even like this morning running, I wrote down 4 things that I wanted to ask you.
Oh.
Even though I had already made this page of notes, there was like, what about this? And what about this?
Remember how we talked about motion brings emotion? Mm-hmm. Yes. And that is everything. My most creative thinking comes from people are like, the shower. I'm like, I'm enjoying the shower when I'm in the shower.
Totally. Yeah.
When I am running or when I am working out, it is all those thought processes. I challenge you, if you choose to put your phone away for 30 minutes of one of your runs, challenge the muscle of your mind to remember what's most important.
That's the problem is I can't remember things. So I've tried that.
Okay.
And then afterwards I'll be like, shit, I wish I wrote that down.
Okay. So what I will do is I will, oh gosh, this is getting very personal. When it comes to ultra marathon running and you got 50K, you start to learn how to never look at your phone because A, you don't have signal, B, it's dead. But I will, like, let's say I want to remember 5 things. I will put them into one word. Like each of those 5 things get one word, and then I remember the first letter and I create a word from it. So then when I get in, let's say I've written the word like dodge or something like that. D stood for this. O is this. G. Yeah, you get the idea. Yeah.
Okay, I can give it a try.
Give it a try. It's wonderful to disconnect a little bit. I know I can feel the agitation already.
I'm already anxious thinking about it.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm not that good at that. What else I want to talk to you about? One of the words you mentioned at the beginning, determined. Mm-hmm. Where does your motivation come from? What motivates you?
To be better every single day.
Carl, what do I say all the time? I'm completely obsessed with growing personally and professionally every day.
Every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And okay, you want to grow every day. So what, I guess daily routine is something.
Yes.
You mentioned waking up at 5.
Yeah.
But what does a normal day look like for you right now?
So I'm up at 5 and talk about who holds me accountable. My Bernese mountain dog, I got him hooked on eating at 5 o'clock every morning. So even if I choose to hit that little snooze button, there's a 120-pound dog with a paw on the side of my bed being like, Mom, it's breakfast time. So 5 o'clock, either it's my dog's alarm that goes off or it's my alarm. And it's funny, nowadays I actually wake up about 15 minutes before it. So it is possible. And it's a great feeling. So when I talk about the concept of having a mentor, one of my mentors actually put me through a course, and it was called Insane Productivity. And I took it for 90 days. And basically what I ended up finding out is that my most productive hours are in the morning. So I will be very truthful with you. After 12 o'clock, I'm like, my brain is mush. Like, talk about noon. Like, it is just like, bleh. Like, I have gone so full throttle with blinders on since 5 a.m., generally speaking, besides maybe a dog walk, that like by the time 12 o'clock hits, I feel like I fully accomplished everything and I'm ready to tackle whatever else comes in the day. So morning routine wise, 5 a.m. alarm goes off. I'm a huge believer of like making the bed right away off the bat. Teeth are brushed, face is washed, in the kitchen, making coffee. While I'm making my coffee, I listen to the gentleman who came out with Insane Productivity. He's got a motivation that comes out every single morning that's 6 minutes or less. That plays every morning while I make my coffee. By the way, I still do this on weekends. It's just routine. It's amazing. And then I sit down and I do a quick list of what I was super grateful for the day previous that just happened, and write what I'm looking forward to for the day, and I get started. So again, when I say that those are my precious hours, even though we have a lot of contact with people around the world that have different time zones, I will go 2 minutes of 2 90-minute airplane mode features a day. So when you talk about anxiety, I had to work massively through it because my family freaks out. They're like, but you're not in an office. Like, and I'm like, my sister's a nurse, you know what I mean? And so she's in an office where it's like, she actually can't talk. So she says, and I'm like, doesn't matter. It's the same thing. Like I have to protect these hours. So I will swipe down on my phone, hit airplane mode, and I'm in airplane mode for 2 90-minute sessions.
Is it the same time every day?
Sometimes
Roughly?
yes, other times no. So it really depends on like if I've got conference calls at a specific time.
Sure.
So sometimes I have to maneuver around that. But yeah, for general part, it's always before noon, 2 of them.
What are you trying to accomplish in that 2 90 minutes?
Yes.
3 hours.
Yeah. And like, I swear I could work for 3 hours a day.
Wow.
And just get everything done. And the days that I don't do airplane mode, like I slacked off for like a month not doing airplane mode. And I'm like, my gosh, my work hours are like 9 hours. Work's gotten so busy. No, it's not.
So are you working? You're working during those 3 hours?
Fully. Yeah, absolutely.
Are you on the app? Like, I guess
I
you're
will
not
either
on your
program
phone.
for clients. I will write my keynote speeches. I will reach out to new prospects. I will go through. I try not to be managed by emails. That's a big thing for me. But sometimes they got to get written back to. So it's everything that I have to tackle in those 90 minutes twice that gets done. And again, I give myself the 2 times is because usually I need to get outside for some fresh air during the split of the 90 minutes.
And so in those 2 90 minutes, you're running or working out as well?
Nope. That doesn't include my
your
workout.
fitness. Okay.
No. So that is full-fledged work time.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. I don't think I could do that.
Recommendation.
Yeah.
Start with a little egg timer.
Unless it was like at 5 a.m. Unless it was like 5 to 6:30, I could do it. But if it's between the hours of 9 a.m. and probably 8 p.m., I would really struggle.
It's hard, especially when you've got a team.
Yeah.
But I will say you'll realize not actually a lot happens during those 2 90-minute periods.
I know. You're probably right.
Crazy. And it's kind of like, you're like, oh my God, people don't need me. Like it's really a little bit of like a sinking of a soul feeling. But then you finish your 90 minutes and you're like, wow, I can't believe how much I just got done. I can do whatever I want to, or I can think of these new creative ideas, or I can read this book, or I can go out for this fancy dinner, go for this run, whatever it might be.
You mentioned one of the first things you do every morning is write down what you're grateful for from the day before. So I was going to ask you about like self-reflection and meditation.
Yeah.
What or when did you start doing that, and what have you found that to be very beneficial? It's
probably one of the most strongest foundations in my life.
Cool.
For sure. Yeah. I measure a lot of my happiness levels based on what I'm grateful for, the experiences I've had in my life, reflecting on those, because I think things can happen so fast nowadays. This kind of goes back to the beginning of the podcast, see the bigger picture of it. So if I'm not reflecting back on that, and it's not to say I go to an arm's length to, think back on it or anything like that, but it's just writing it out in a single sentence and being like, whoa, that happened. That's pretty amazing. And then you move on. But meditation wise, it doesn't matter how many times, I found I started to become very hard on myself when it came to meditation. So I would want to, carve out 30 minutes to do it. But I actually started to realize that I could meditate doing things, which was really, really neat. So, for instance, ultramarathon running. I was at Bunsen Lake yesterday and I was doing the loop with my Bernice, and that to me was pure meditation. So being in the trails, there's no signal whatsoever for my phone. So that, thank goodness, I'm already off the hook. And it was a sunny day, so that was wonderful. But for me, that's meditative. So running to me is meditative. I love cooking. Cooking to me is very meditative. So I was even listening to a podcast a couple of days ago when the gentleman was saying that he finds himself meditating anytime he gets into an Uber. So like obviously here in Vancouver, we don't have Ubers, but he makes a conscious decision every time he gets into a vehicle that he is, and when he's not driving, he's meditating. He doesn't have to be closing his eyes or anything like that, but like he's just grounding himself. And I think that's one of the most important words that I would provide is just, find a way to get grounded.
One of the things I do not do very well is, I guess it would be self-reflection, but look back at accomplishments and think, okay, I did something pretty cool. I get kind of obsessed with the failures, and because they're such big learning experiences.
Okay.
And the big wins are very small periods of time for me. And it's like a quick high five and then it's over. Whereas like the failures, I'll think about a little bit longer and pull out a ton of lessons from.
Good. Okay.
I see a lot of people doing the opposite. And the wins they try to celebrate for an extended period of time.
Ooh, that doesn't get you anywhere either.
Yeah. But I guess I've had this conversation before, and a lot of people have mentioned that celebrating a big success in your life actually can help push you forward, but it's just never really been that case for me. But in you saying that you're writing down things that you're grateful for from the day before, it's kind of like reflecting on wins. But do you have any other examples, or I guess what do you take away from the failures?
That's a great question. And I think what it comes down to is what you are motivated by. Are you motivated by the wins, or are you motivated by the failures? Because I equally am motivated by the failures. They are actually like probably like really deeply like my favorite part, which is really messed up. But that's where the greatness lies, right? Yeah, totally. It's interesting because when I talk about writing down things that I'm grateful for, I will write down failures. So that also comes into play because it comes down to the choice of how we choose to look at it.
For sure.
So is it always positive that gets written and things that I'm grateful for the day before? Of course, the positive wins go in there, but like, oh my gosh, if we looked at it, probably a good 60% is learning from the failures and seeing what new opportunities can be taken from them.
Okay, cool. I like that.
Yeah.
I'm glad I clarified. One thing I have written on my website and I say all the time is I hate losing, and everything I'm doing, everything I do every day is to try to not lose, to try to win. But I love so much what they do to me.
Yes.
What the failures, losses do to me.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting that you say, are you motivated by a win, success, or are you motivated by the loss and what it does to you?
Absolutely.
And for me, it's definitely that. It's definitely the loss.
And I think that's where, like, when you're looking for mentors out there, look for people who are vulnerable enough to admit their failures.
Totally.
Because that is where you're going to learn from them. And they're also open to learning from themselves hugely. So it's funny because I think what it really forces us to be is just vulnerable with ourselves and be like, whoa, I really, really messed up there. Whatever feeling you're feeling, embarrassment, shame, feel it, because in this day and age, we skip past it so quickly and feel those feelings and be like, okay, I never want to be there again. How can I change it?
Exactly. I like that a lot. That was great. The last thing I wanted to just point out, hold on, let me read it quickly.
Okay.
I pulled a quote from your bio, I think, on your website.
Yeah.
And it's, freedom is found when you let go of who you think you're supposed to be and embrace who you really are.
Yeah.
And for me, that is, I've felt this exact thing happen over the last maybe 2 years. And so it was cool, like going through your little bio on your website and finding this quote.
Thank you.
So one, thank you for writing that because I love it. But two, what does this mean to you, this quote?
Whew. Okay. So I'm thinking back to like 13 years old, reading 17 magazine, thinking you've got to be like this cookie cutter image, and that's what you got to be. And that's by no means who we are at our core. Really, it's amazing because I think when we see the bigger picture, it's beautiful. Our families have expectations of us. Our friends have expectations of us. Our coworkers have expectations of us. Our bosses, whoever it might be. And it's like sometimes we have to step outside that a little bit and kind of be like, does this resonate with me? Like what I'm doing, who I am in this exact moment. I'm going to probably upset some people, but is this who I am authentically? And if you can't answer that with a heck yes, then it takes some assessing and being like, okay, these people are still going to love me regardless, but I need to find out more of who I am at my core. And it takes some work. It takes some reflection. It takes thinking about the future and the person. We're all responsible for our energy that we bring into this world completely. Me sitting here with you right now, I could have come in here, womp womp, you know what I mean? But it's no, we are responsible for that energy. And so if you can't be coming about it authentically from your core, it takes a little bit of digging.
So good. I love that quote, and I'm probably going to use it again. So thank you.
I've really enjoyed, and just to, I wanted to answer your question first, but what was top of mind to me was actually how wonderful it has been to see you coming outside of that shell for the past 2 years. So huge kudos to you for, discovering that side of yourself, because, I look at people in their 60s who are like, I'm still figuring out who I am. And I'm sure we'll be in our 60s and we'll still be figuring out elements of who we are. But I will sure as heck know that in my 30s, I was darn confident with who I was. So yeah, totally. Keep living that.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. The last thing I ask people to do is to make the final statement. Usually it's either a little piece of advice that has helped you along the way that you got from someone, a mentor, etc., or share something that can push people forward, whether it be fitness, nutrition wise or business wise.
Okay, that's a good one. Save the best for last.
I don't know how we beat what we just talked about, though. Embracing yourself.
I'm like, oh dear.
That doesn't get any better.
Top it off. There's so many things that are coming to mind. I think without being discouraging, a huge reality that I've realized is that balance doesn't really exist. And when I say that, we are constantly learning and evolving and discovering different parts of ourselves where we're going to be out of balance. And that's actually what challenges us. So don't be afraid to push the boundaries of what you think balance might be. Step outside of that comfort zone and be willing to, again, we go back to seeing that bigger picture, because we're so presented in society nowadays what life is supposed to look like, and the shoulds, right? And again, Tony Robbins reference, but stop shouldn'ting all over yourself. Yeah. So see that bigger picture and realize that it's okay to come out of balance, because it really doesn't exist when you're looking for your best purpose and what you most want to achieve in life.
I did a podcast on work-life balance, and basically the whole point of it was, it doesn't exist. There's no template. There's no framework. Figure out what works for you.
Thank you. Going back to every body is different, right? Every mind is different. Everybody's life is so different. So there's no cookie cutter way that is the way to do it.
Totally. Mm-hmm. Mandy, thank you so much for coming on. That was a lot of fun.
That was wonderful.
I learned a lot. And as soon as I leave, I'm going to Google tempeh. Tempeh?
Really? Because I'm going to go home and eat it.
Nice. Maybe I'll pick some up.
I better give you some recipes, because if you eat it bland, this is not going to go well.
Is this like a tofu?
It's a type of tofu. It's soybean. Okay. And just make sure you got salt and pepper, and put it on the stove, fry it up, put some nice things with it. Pretend it's chicken.
Okay.
There you go. You're good.
If you're into fitness or want to learn more about nutrition and health, follow Mandy on Instagram. Mandy, what's your Instagram?
MGMFit_Mandy.
Beautiful. Or check out our website, mandygill.com.
You got it. Yeah.
Beautiful. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Hit me up on Instagram. I would love to hear your feedback, positive, negative. I learn more from the negative, so be as negative as you want. Denny.Dumas. Later.